Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, sponsored by the Draft Professors. Joined today, Draft Professors Hank, Jordan, Dante. Dante, this is your first Draft Professor podcast. Welcome to the channel. How are you doing tonight?
Thanks for having me, man. First of all, and I'm doing well. Anytime I get to talk about the draft or football in general, I'm super stoked. So thanks for the invite.
Cool. And Jordan, this is your second podcast on camera. You've also joined several of our 32-person mock drafts on Friday to draft for the Panthers. Welcome back. How are you today?
I'm good, man. It's Combine week, so it's always a good week here in Pantherville. So,
cool. And Hank, welcome back. How'd the podcast with Broshmo go?
Yeah, podcast with Broshmo was really good. We've been texting pretty often ever since the Senior Bowl, so it's good to make a video with him, and I think I'm going to be back on in April, so see what happens there.
Cool. Well, we are here to talk about the 2026 Edge class. And Hank, I'm going to put this one to you first. What edges do you have a first-round grade on?
So I have 4 first-round grades at edges. I got Ruben Bain, Malachi Lawrence, which is kind of a shocking one, Arvell Reese, and then David Bailey would be the 4 with first-round grades for me.
Okay, and then Dante, who are your first-round grades at edge?
Looking at my list here, I have David Bailey. Now this is going to be a little different. So Akeem Mesidor, and then Romello Height are my 3.
Okay, and then Jordan, who are your first-round grades at edge?
Bain, Bailey, Reese, Parker, and Falk.
Okay, so Hank, you're the only one that mentioned Malachi Lawrence, and this doesn't surprise me that you are high on Malachi Lawrence. We want to tell everybody about Malachi Lawrence.
Yeah, so Malachi Lawrence is someone that a friend of mine, Hail Mary Sports, Alex, put me onto in the summer during that whole process. And ever since I watched this film, there's just been a clear vision with me with Malachi Lawrence. I think he, by far, the fastest hands in the draft, and some of the fastest hands I've seen of the past couple of years when it comes to the scouting process. Good length. Sadly, didn't get confirmed 35-inch arms as it was rumored. Came in at 33.5. But other than that, you're getting at very minimum a near elite DPR, in my opinion, Malachi Lawrence, who once he's able to have a little bit better hand placement possibly and maybe be a bit more consistent in the run if you want to be a 3-down player, this is a guy who's going to dominate off the edge. He's going to get probably 10 sacks a season once he hits that prime, and he's going to stay in the NFL a very long time just doing DPR work. I personally think he can get as good as Josh Hines-Allen. I think that's the ultimate vision that I have with him, but that is more of a ceiling comp, but I also really love the player. He's just an amazing pass rusher with legit 3-down upside. So it's a guy I'm willing to take a flyer on, possibly back end of the first if he tests really well. You know, I'm hearing some things like he could be running a 4.44 in the 40, and he is a sick athlete, so it wouldn't shock me. But for anything 4.5, low 4.5s, I think you're going to start seeing him early second round, possibly late day 1 talks.
You're not the only one that likes Lawrence. Now, you like Lawrence, let's say, higher.
He's in my top 10, yeah.
Right. But there's a lot of people, like as we do the mock drafts that I did with Jordan, for example, there's definitely people that are taking Lawrence top 50, and they're really, some people are surprised to see Lawrence available at the back of round 2. Yeah. So there's a huge community that loves Malachi Lawrence. I think Hank is president of that community. Dante, you want to talk about an edge that's you have a first-round grade on that might be a little bit different than the other guys in the podcast?
Yeah, Romello Height for me. I actually think it's kind of the same process that I went through with Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor, where I end up liking the other guy that wasn't the premier edge rusher for the team better than the guy that is the premier edge rusher. Now, I understand David Bailey gets, the hype, and, in the first half of games, he's a total, destroyer, on the edge. But I feel like his second half approach, like his motor starts to slow down against some teams. And, in the NFL, that's not going to work. You got to be able to go all 4 quarters. And the guy that really sticks out to me is Romello Height. I understand he's I think him and Akeem Mesidor are actually the same age. Like they were born in the same month as well. And so I thought that was interesting that I like both of those guys and they're older. But, when it comes to age, it comes a lot of experience. And, he's another one of those guys that transferred in, got paid pretty handsomely to come to Texas Tech. But I think the thing about Romello Height and why I'm so high on him is I think he's a better edge than he is an off-ball linebacker, and I think he excels at both, in my opinion. Being out at the Senior Bowl and watching him, I was kind of disappointed that they were doing the same thing, trying to figure out where exactly he was going to fit. But I think if you narrow him down to just playing edge, he can be a total game wrecker. I think he has amazing bend. If I kind of had to give a kind of a comp on him, I was actually going to say Josh Hines Allen as well for my comp for Romello Height, just a little bit stronger. With his hands, and I think Josh is, and I'm a Jaguars fan, so of course I'm partial in seeing him play a lot. But I just think Romello Height has the total package, and if in case you have to put him in coverage, it's just like I tell people, you can't compare Myles Garrett and TJ Watt. They're two totally different positions, and it's kind of unique that you have a guy like Romello Height that can play defensive end and outside linebacker. And if you really wanted to get crazy, you could probably slide him in a 3 technique and see what he can do there as well. So, but I have a first round grade on him. I think he's amazing at what he does on film. And then it's always hard to evaluate guys that have, such good weapons next to him, like, Lee Hunter and the rest of those guys that are on that defense. But, you kind of have to see past that in your evaluation and kind of say, is this guy really doing a lot of work on one-on-ones, or has he benefited from the guy beside him? Or is he making the guys beside him better in that aspect? I think the guy, who was it from Texas A&M last year that went to the Bengals? Shamar Stewart was kind of the same way. He didn't put up a lot of the sack numbers, but Shamar Turner and the rest of those guys really did benefit from him doing a lot of the dirty work. So I kind of look at Romello Height in that way too. I don't think he's going to have that meteoric rise because if everybody knows, Shamar Stewart last year just kind of killed it in the testing process, and got his next plane ticket to the team that he was going to get drafted to. But Romello Height's got a long way to go to impress a lot of people, but I think I think he can be up there.
And then I had a question for you on that real quick. Does the injury history with Height worry you at all? Like, does his age or injury history, like, how does that weigh in for you in your grading?
Yeah. He had a pretty healthy year. I always like to give guys the benefit of the doubt in my evaluation process. Mm-hmm. And if any injuries that they had previously affected them, in the current year that they were in, kind of had the same thing with Michael Penix Jr. too. And then you kind of see his knee just gave out again this year as well. But I think, you take it for what it is, and the year that they're in. And if it seems like it affected them, then you grade him against it. But his film looked pretty clean. Then also a feather in the cap is actually going to one of these all-star games like the Senior Bowl and looking completely healthy too. When you had guys like Danny Dennis from Penn State that, is going down with a couple injuries during the practices. So, but yeah, I mean, he looks pretty clean so far. Age, of course on defense, that's a huge thing, but I'm just so impressed by his film that I'm willing to look past it sometimes. And sometimes it'd be a good thing, sometimes it'd be a bad thing. But you have guys like LT Overton who are 21 versus him being, sub 25 at this point in time that might have a little bit more upside. But I think he showed a lot from where it was previously to when he got to Texas Tech as well.
So Jordan, how about you? Is there a first round edge that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, I think one of the more polarizing prospects for me this draft process has been Keldrick Falk out of Auburn. One, you don't really know what he is, right? If he's probably going to measure in around 275, 280 at the combine, 6'6". So is he an outside linebacker? Is he a 3-4 defensive end? So you really don't know. I think he does provide that versatility. It's one of the reasons why I like him. He's an excellent run defender. He's only 20. So you go back and look at his 2024 production at 19 and he had 9 sacks or 8.5 sacks or whatever it was. So I think the upside for him is really high. I compare him almost to Mykel Williams out of Georgia last year, who had a pretty good 2024 in comparison to 2023, where he looked like a top 5 pick. So the dip in production worries me a little bit. But if you look at his film, he was still applying pressure. He still creating havoc. He just wasn't getting home as much. Very similar like TJ Parker, who we'll probably talk about later on. as well. But like I said, he's an excellent run defender. Grades really well in that aspect. I think that's one thing you're going to get right off the bat. I think if a team can be patient with him and not expect a 10+ sack season, probably in his first 2 years, then you're probably going to get somebody that has like I said, really high upside. For me, I think his highest ceiling is probably another Jags outside linebacker defensive end, and that's Travon Walker. I think he kind of hits along the same lines as far as like his body type and his production. Now, is he the athlete that Travon Walker is? And that's something we'll see this week. I'm interested to look at that. So if he tests really well, if he comes in and he runs, anywhere like around a sub 4.7, right, at 6'6", 275, then he's probably going to shoot up boards. I think right now he's looking at close to the end of round one, somewhere around that 25 range is where most teams are probably comfortable taking him. Unless you, like I said, unless you really just want to bank on his upside, then you're probably going to take him somewhere around 20.
So, Jordan, I have a question for you on Keldrick Falk. And
Yeah.
I think I said this in the Draft Professor group chat, but do you think that Falk is a victim of who we wanted him to be in the summer? Like in the summer, to me, a lot of the conversation was, is he edge one, Ruben Bain, top 5? But he never really hit that level. So do you think like maybe that he just didn't live up to the hype that the media gave him? Or do you see a solid NFL player?
No, I think he's still a solid NFL player. I do think he did. His production did dip this year, and you would love to see him have a season like Ruben Bain where he has 10 to 15 sacks. But at the same time, I think he played on a defensive line that wasn't as stout as Miami's. And I'm not using that to say give him credit or anything like that, but at the same time, I do think having Mesidor on the other side of you does benefit Bain a little bit. Obviously, Bain is still edge one. He was edge one coming in to the season for me as well. But I do think having somebody like Mesidor who was more experienced, working with a Hall of Famer and Jason Taylor did help him, and obviously Keldrick Falk is at Auburn at an SEC program, so he has a ton of resources. But at the same time, I do think that was something that you coming off an 8+ sack season. Okay, now we want to see you take the next step. You're not 21, but still another year in the program. We want to see you take that next step. What does it look like for you? And it was less than 5 sacks.
Okay. So from a round 2, or let me rephrase that, from a day 2 edge perspective, Dante, how many edges do you see going before we leave round 3? Like how many edges are in your top 100 and any of those guys that you want to highlight for everybody that you like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first 3 rounds are just going to be edge heavy this year. And, there's a couple of reasons for that. I think all of us know the quarterbacks and, the linebacker class is very top heavy as well, here and, a couple other positions. But, I can see anywhere from 15 to 18 edges coming off the board in the first 3 rounds. A guy like that I wanted to highlight, Mikel Kamara. I understand that I think last year he had 7 or 10 sacks. I can't remember. I think the previous year to that he had about 7. And then his production fell off. I think he only had 2 this year, but everybody understands how good that Indiana squad was too. So do you look at a situation like him, like, we brought up Shamar Stewart, where, everybody else is benefiting? Because I think his film is pretty clean for the most part. Tyreek Sapp out of Florida, watched his film a little bit. And, is he another product of them having a really good defense? I think the one thing that held Florida together was their, of course, their defense all year long. But, sometimes he shines, sometimes he totally disappeared on film. But I don't know if anybody's going to look at him and say, he's kind of an athletic freak. Another guy at the Senior Bowl that, by the time day 3 came around, you started seeing him a lot coming off the edge. And Dame Tucker, I think, is in any other draft that wasn't this draft coming out of Western Michigan. I understand he transferred in from Houston, not having any production at all. And then, ending the year with the most sacks in the country, I believe it was. And, showed out at the Senior Bowl, especially in day 2. I think that was like his best day. But overall, I mean, he's got the size and the speed and everything to be a really good edge as well. And he could be an early day 2, or he could be a late day 3, just depending on where people see his value. So, but I think you're going to see a lot of jumps like that, right? Like guys that should be second round, maybe just going to go in the third round because a team might need an offensive lineman or corner that might come off the board. And, to bring up Hank's guy, Malachi Lawrence, I could see him being in that first to third range as well. Another guy that showed out, at these all-star games as well. And, what's going to be the value on him? Where is he going to fit? Because he has, again, the size and the speed, and the arm length is really amazing for an edge. So, where do you value him? So those are just a couple of the guys. And then you throw a guy that had like a really good late season push with the Buckeyes and Caden Curry. Like, he's a very interesting one. He could be a day 3, or somebody could take a chance and end of the second round. We were just like scratching our heads at like, why? But his last 4 games were pretty incredible. You could say he was one of the best edges in the country the last 4 games. So, there's a lot of value in where he's going to fit, where all these guys are going to fit in the scheme. But, it's a good problem to have for a lot of NFL teams, because we could come out and say a guy like George Grubbs Jr. from Florida could be the best edge rusher in this class. Who knows? There's just so many to evaluate, and it's a great problem for the NFL, but it's hard for us, of course. We're going to cling on to the guys that we love on film, but there's a lot of names out there. Quintavious Hutchins from Boston College is another one that I think has slowly started rising up on people's boards. Like, I'm seeing a lot of mocks having him late second round on some mocks. So who knows, man? I just think there's a lot of meat on the bones for a lot of teams.
So Jordan, how about you? How many edges do you have in your top 100, and who are some of the day 2 guys that you like?
So I have right now 17 guys that I think will go in the first 2 days on my board. A couple of the guys that I like in day 2, I like both of the. I guess Barham is considered an edge. So I consider him an edge.
We need more Jayshon Barham propaganda.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Jayshon Barham. Derek Moore as well. So I think both of those edges are really good value in the second round. We talked about Dennis Sutton earlier, who another guy I think who we expected to have a better 2025 than he did, is another guy that I think is going to have good value. I don't know how the rest of you guys feel about Zion Young. I think he's excellent value somewhere in the mid second round as well. I think
he shot up.
Yeah. So he's another guy. I think he's got. I think we talked about it last time on the last podcast with Drew. He was talking about how violent Zion Young is, and that's one of the things you see, and it jumps off his film. So he's another guy that I like in the second round.
And Hank, you want to talk about your day 2 edge list and highlight, and send some questions to Jordan and Dante to get them involved as well. You're muted.
Yeah, I figured that one out pretty fast.
There you go.
So my day 2 edges, we got currently I don't have that many, just because I need to grade a lot more guys. But currently I have 8 that have a day 2 grade. I expect it to finish around 12, I'd say, which would then give me about 20-ish, I think, overall. So I think there's a lot of good players in day 2. It's just a lot of DPRs, in my opinion. So it's kind of just, how many of these guys are going to get picked when they're all the same archetype. That's why I think guys like Zion Young, Keldrick Falk, who I do really like, I think he gets too much almost hate for being this high floor, low ceiling guy, but he's barely 20 years old. And if he can develop a pass rush bag at 24, he's still a young player. Like he has plenty of time to figure it out. So I definitely see the vision with Keldrick Falk. Would have liked to see more pass rush in college, 100%, but there is still a ways to go for him. He has plenty of time to develop. And then Zion Young, like Jordan said, I mean, he's just violent. Day 1, runs stuffer off the edge at minimum. And he really took a step forward with this pass rush, had a good Senior Bowl. And some of the interviews he gave were pretty interesting. But he's got some off the field things that we need to have some concern about. Picked up a DUI this offseason. So especially with the whole James Pierce situation in the NFL, I think teams are going to weigh in on character concerns a bit more this year. So we'll see what happens with him. But again, this is a guy like Zion Young. I think his ceiling could be 31 to the Patriots. Like that's how high I think he could go. But more than likely a round 2 guy. Another guy that I really liked that I didn't hear was Joshua Josephs from Tennessee. I think he's a stud. He's undersized in terms of height and weight, but his arm length is ridiculous. I'm pretty sure it was close to, I think it was 81.5-inch wingspan or something like that. I mean, arm length for days. And not only that, I think he has the pass rush tools and the flashes to turn into a good, consistent guy. I don't think he gets enough love for the work that he puts in the run game. I think this is definitely a 3-down player in a few seasons. I think even though he is a senior, I think he has plenty of potential left. I think there's still a lot to unravel with him. I do think that, at his absolute best, I see a guy like Kayvon Chason, who had a really good year in New England this year. So I think, it's even with like Kayvon Chason, it could take him a few years to figure it out. But I think he will figure it out. When he does figure it out, he's going to be a plus NFL edge rusher that a team could use in a rotation at worst. Other guys like Gabe Akis, I've seen him in person a few times, talked to him at the Senior Bowl as well. He had an amazing Senior Bowl, one of the best day ones that I've seen in a while, and just powerful off the edge. And then another guy's Anthony Lucas from USC, another guy that I think just has the tools and the traits to be probably more around 3 pick, but a good developmental guy off the edge. And I think that's going to, I like Derek Moore, Jayshon Barham as well. And then I also have Mesidor and TJ Parker in the mix too. But I would say Joseph is probably my favorite day 2 edge right now.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you guys a question about Ethan Burke, like the fall off of Ethan Burke, because last year we were talking about this guy being pretty high, and then I know he had a couple of injuries this year. He actually had some injuries last year too, but the talent was just off the charts. We're like, we don't even care about the production. He just looks like an NFL edge, and now we're not even talking about him until probably day 3. So, where do you guys have him in the evaluation process?
So I still need to watch more film on him. But the size is obviously something that is very appealing. I think he measured in back in the spring with Texas. What was it, 6'6", 260?
Yeah, about that.
The size is really good. I would have liked to see more pass rush production from him going from 2024 to 2025. I think it roughly stayed about the same, but he did grade out well in the run game. So that was an improvement for him. I think, like you said, it's probably like a day 3 guy. Round 6 is where I would be comfortable taking him, but I do think he's somebody that can be a rotational guy.
Yeah, I think Ethan Burke is. Yeah, I think he'll get drafted. I think he'll be late day 3.
Mm-hmm.
There's always room for NFL draft picks when you play that many downs at Texas in the SEC. So he definitely has some premium. I think a team like the Bears with Dennis Allen would love him. I think, round 7, he could just, take a flyer on him. He fits the Dennis Allen mold for an edge rusher. And there's definitely talent there. He's yet to put it all together, but there's something to work with for sure when you have a size like that.
I feel like the Cardinals might be a bet for him because their D-line coach just got hired there. So, you kind of connecting the dots, and maybe he might be a day 2 guy, if they decide to go there, So we've seen strange things happen like that where positional coaches go off to the NFL and they go and grab their guy.
Well, speaking of which, Oklahoma's defensive coordinator is now Buffalo's defensive line coach. So if I read tea leaves, R. Mason Thomas could go round 1 to Buffalo. But go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think that's a good time to take R. Mason Thomas. I've been diving deep because there's a Panthers fan that I follow. He's got R. Mason Thomas as his number 3 edge, right? I think it's a little rich, right? I think the limitations, like they said, the limitations for him are probably what's keeping him out of the first round. But I do see a team like Buffalo late in the first round that would be willing to bank on his pass rush production because he does have one of the best pass rush bags in this class. I think he's very quick off the line. And something we talked about last week, if he was 6'4", 260, we wouldn't even be talking about him in the second round, day 2. So, I really like him. The more I watch his film, the more I like him because coming into, I'd probably say in the last 2 months, I had Cassius Howe over him, another smaller guy. And his limitations are probably scarier than R. Mason Thomas just because of his arm length.
Jordan, you are not the first one who I have heard say that within the last 7 days. Yeah. That they've moved R. Mason Thomas over Howell Howell is a historical outlier,
Yeah, he is.
right? So
Yeah.
it's a bet on production versus,
Traits.
let's say, traits. But here's a good question here from Anthony. So an Anthony Lucas. So Anthony Lucas from USC, if memory serves me correctly, he's about 6'5", 270, 280, prototypical size, but the film doesn't match. Hank, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so Anthony Lucas is a guy I talked about for day two. I still liked him. I liked him a lot more over the summer. I thought he was going to take a jump. Didn't take the jump, but I have down 6'4", 267, and I just think I think there's still a body to work with there. He's twitched up. He's got good arm length. Like he uses it well. He uses arm length well. It's nothing like that's going to jump out at you like numbers wise. But if you know how to use your arm length, you're going to be fine. He gets a ton of pressures. He just needs to clean up like TFLs. He needs to clean up the sacks. And I think he's got underrated bend and dip off the edge. But something with that really bothered me when I watched him, especially this year, is he's almost pushing himself too wide. Like if you're rushing out of the wide nine, there's no reason to make your job harder and go even further wide. So it just felt like every play he looped around every play. If he won, he got the pressure. But if he didn't win, then he's 3 feet away from the play, no matter what it is. So I think he almost set himself up for failure too often, just trying to beat guys to the edge with speed. And I think there's a better way to go around with that. I think he needs more of a pass rush plan. But I think in the NFL, I think he'd be a rotational guy with 3-down ability. But I think more than likely just rotational DPR if he can put it all together.
Okay. So we talked about R. Mason Thomas. I'm thinking we probably have some other day two edges. Actually, so Dante, where are you and Malachi Lawrence right now?
Yeah, I have him as a day two guy, for sure. I really didn't get to watch a ton of UCF this year, and I'm usually pretty all over the place with almost every team, at least watching them at least one time. But I got a lot of exposure to him this offseason. So the thing about him is he's so quick off the edge, and he can get down really, really low in his bend. I think the one thing that I see from everybody that's either watched him is like, man, I wish he'd use his arms more, or develop another pass rusher move, which I think that's more of the theme in this class than anything. Is like guys in this class are just so used to using just one move, either if it's a bull rush like our Mason, from Oklahoma. Like he reminds me of Danielle Hunter so much, and just his bull rush move. And then you have guys like David Bailey, who will use a swim move, but later in the game start using the spin move. And it's like, just put the whole toolkit together, you'd be so much more dominant. And I think it's the same way with him as well. Is let's start just working whatever side that you're on. Start working that guy, make him scared of everything that you got, because you see that in the NFL. Guys aren't. No, I think that was the kind of the evaluation when Aiden Hutchinson was coming out of Michigan. Everybody's like that move the hand out the way move that he was doing in the middle of an offensive lineman was not going to work. And you start to see him develop a spin move and, start working on his bend a little bit. So I think that's kind of the thing with him is like, I just want to see the toolkit start opening up for Malachi Lawrence, because I think the potential is obviously he's athletic. I mean, if you ever seen the guy in person, he looks like an action figure. So
Dante,
Jordan, one edge that wasn't mentioned was Max Llewellyn from Iowa. Where do you have Llewellyn?
So I have him, late round 3, early round 4 kind of guy. I think he's somebody that, has an excellent motor, somebody with great size. His pass rush production again this year was pretty good. I wouldn't say it was, phenomenal, but it's somebody that you obviously see on film that he's working hard constantly. Not the best run defender, and I think that's my biggest knock on him with his size. Is somebody that, like I said, he's 6'5", 260 plus, and he does get bullied a little bit in the run game. So that does concern me with my edges. I don't think he is an outside linebacker. I think he's more of a 4-3 defensive end. So, in those aspects, I think, defensive coordinators prefer to have somebody that is a little bit more stout against the run, and that's my biggest concern with Max Llewellyn.
So, Hank, question in the comments here about Kieran Crawford. I believe he's the other edge from Auburn. If I have the school right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, Keon Crawford is, I'd say he's fun. I don't know how serious of an NFL ability he has. And I think that not only that, I don't think he's the way he plays, his play style is definitely tries to get small and just tries to be faster than the guy around the edge. So I don't know how much that's going to work in the NFL. I think he's a fun college player. I think he's a guy you take a day 3 flyer on just to see if he can win off the edge as a rotational piece. But he does have a good athleticism, good speed, good acceleration. So at worst, you're getting a special teams guy. I think he can definitely fly down the field if you ask him to. But in terms of being an actual rotational NFL piece, I think it's gonna be hard for him to crack that just because I think his pass rush plan is just get small and go around the guy. And when that doesn't work, I don't see much else.
So, Dante, question for you here from Anthony. Thoughts on this?
Let's see.
I have my vote. We'll all be able to weigh in a vote, but we'll start with Dante on this one.
I think as much as I think that Ruben Bain is going to turn up being a 3 technique in the NFL, like he just, for whatever reason, screams Geno Atkins from Cincinnati to me. I don't see him as an edge in this class. I think he would be a great 3 technique, but I think Akeem Mesidor is, to me, probably the most NFL ready edge in this class. Like, if you're just asking a guy, day one, skip past the preseason, we need you to start day one, who you're probably going to get a lot of value out of, I think it's probably him. 6'3", 280, moves like a Mack truck. He moves inside, outside, can play a little bit of off ball. You even seen him early in the season drop back in coverage a couple times too. So, I think that's another like storyline of this edge class is a lot of these guys are so versatile too. But if you're asking him just put his hand in the dirt and just run after a guy, I think Akeem Mesidor is probably the guy I would go after. And I think he said Zion Young too. I think that's a very good pick as well. I think those 2 guys are up there as like the most NFL rules. Yeah. I think those are the 2 guys that I would throw in the bucket right now.
So, Jordan, how about you? Who do you think is the best 2-way edge where they can plug the run and give you some pass rush?
So I wanted to say Mesidor. For me, Mesidor, the only thing that's keeping him out of the first round, obviously, is age. If you just look at the prospect just from his film, Mesidor is he has the best pass rush bag in this class, in my opinion. I think he is a phenomenal athlete as well for his size. But I think if you're looking at a day one, like I said, I don't have a day one grade on him, but I do see somebody like a Detroit at 18. I could see him going there and immediately being opposite Aiden Hutchinson and making an instant impact. So he's my guy that I think is probably the best day one impact guy. Another one, and it's probably not as popular, is TJ Parker. Just going off of everything I've seen in the last 2 years with him, I think he is an excellent run defender. I think he's got good pass production. I guess pass rush moves. I would like to see a little bit more violence from him, and I think that's going to come with him getting stronger. I think sometimes he can get a little bit stonewalled, and that's one of my problems with him. But I think as far as 2-way versatility goes, I think he's one of my top guys.
So, Hank, if you had to pick a couple of edges that are 2-dimensional, can play the run, can give you some pass rush juice, who comes to your mind?
Yeah, so I'll start with a few names I consider, then I'll give you my hot take for who it is. I definitely think Mesidor is in there, especially with age. I think that he's got the experience, and I think my dream fit for him is Cincinnati on day 2, just as a guy who can go help that defense win immediately. Because I think the offense is ready to win a Super Bowl. The offense can clearly compete. It's just the defense, and I think Mesidor round 2 to the Bengals would be perfect. Another guy that I think is going to be really good day 1, of course, Zion Young. The run stuffing ability is just going to be good from day 1. And if he can show a bit of that pass rush that he had this year at Missouri, he's a guy who can get you 7-8 sacks in his rookie year, and I wouldn't be surprised. But the name that I want to throw out, because every time I saw him at the edge, it just looked natural. I thought he could fit, is Arvell Reese. I think Arvell Reese should be a full-time edge in the NFL. And I think when he played the edge this year, I think his anchor was phenomenal. He can stuff the run. He throws around 330-pound offensive linemen like they're 200 pounds. And he just has his way with offensive linemen on the edge. He can get after the passer. He's got speed to power. He showcased dip and bend off the edge. He's got a long arm. I mean, there's so much that he has in his bag. I'm just waiting for the full transition to edge because right now we don't know if he's going to be a linebacker, an edge, a hybrid, if he's going to be a primary QB spy. What's the team going to use him as? In my opinion, he should go to the edge. He should be a full-time edge because he has all the tools. And whenever I watched him play the edge, he just looked dominant and he just looked more. He looked like he belonged on the edge. Is how I'll put it.
I agree with that 1000% when I watch this film because I'm not the biggest fan of Arvell Reese, and I think it's because of them trying to figure out where he was supposed to be. And then when he's standing next to Caleb Downs, they're essentially the same size when you look at him on the field too. So I hope he beefs up in the NFL if he's going to play edge. But I agree. If we were to see 100% of his snaps at edge versus 100% of his snaps at even middle linebacker, because he was playing that at some points, like, I think he would his grade would probably be, we would be talking about him as probably the number one edge if he put again, another guy that's like add a couple more, tools to the toolkit, he would be unstoppable with just the talent level that he has.
Yeah, I saw him in that first game against Texas last year, going up against DJ Campbell, Trevor Goolsby, and Brandon Baker. Those three are all NFL starting offensive linemen potentially, and he just had his way all day. And I was like, because for me it was like, oh, I could watch Caleb Downs and Sonny Styles, and then this kid comes out of nowhere and he's playing all over the field looking like Abdul Carter 2.0. And I'm like, who is this kid? Because like I knew Arvell Reese, but I was like, I didn't think he was going to be like an impact player day one for them. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, he's definitely, for me, he's always been an edge.
So Arvell Reese got mentioned on this podcast twice over the summer. We did an Ohio State preview, and I think he may have gotten 10 seconds. We really didn't cover him for very long. Yeah. And then one of the draft professors did a sleeper podcast in August. And basically EJ's formula was he was looking for first-year starters. Like somebody that's replacing a player that went to the NFL, right? So Sawyer and JTT went to the NFL. So he was looking for those situations. So he spent maybe 2 minutes on Arvell Reese on the sleeper episode. But it's fun. And Hank, as you were explaining Arvell Reese, I started thinking, 2 years ago, we were having the same conversation on Abdul Carter, right? So meaning as we were going through the summer, the biggest question was, Abdul Carter making the transition from linebacker to edge. Can he do it? Then he ends up going, I believe like second overall to the Giants or third overall to the Giants.
Yeah.
Kind of thing in the draft, right? So it's not unprecedented that we're having this conversation. The only difference is we're having the conversation during the draft cycle. We're not having it during the summer because the Abdul Carter conversation was in the summer. Once he actually started playing edge, there was never any doubt in our mind.
Yeah,
kind of thing. Yeah. Jordan, you were mentioning also Derek Moore from Michigan would be another great edge that gives you pass rush, can defend the run, right? So you want to talk about him for a little bit?
Yeah, I just think Michigan does a really good job of getting their guys to buy in fully on run defense, and he's no different, right? And obviously, I think he's a really good pass rusher. He's strong. We saw it at the Senior Bowl. I forgot, was it Markel Bell? That he was going up against, and he just ran through him. And Markel Bell's 6'9", 370 pounds, and he just made him look like me out there on the field. So, and we all know Markel Bell is a really good offensive lineman. So, Derek Moore is another guy. I think coming in day one, if he's not the starter, he could be your number 3 edge, and probably give you good production. 5 to 6 sacks starting off.
And one of the things that should be pointed out between like Zion Young, Derek Moore, Arvell Reese, there's a reason that these players are either round 1, round 2 prospects, because NFL teams are going to want edges that can play the run and the pass. And that when you are not situationally dependent, like a David Bailey, well, if you're drafting a designated pass rusher in the top 10, right, there's going to be some controversy there. Yeah. Because now some people think David Bailey's better against the run than maybe he gets credit for. But the Zion Young, the Derek Moores of the world, the Arvell Reeses of the world that can play the run and the pass, that's one of the reasons they're going to go higher than maybe some of the initial scouting reports have stated. Because like when we covered Derek Moore, in October, November, people were talking about him in like round 3. He's a day 2 player, but he's the back of day 2. And now he's getting a little bit of first round love. So
yeah, I think it was like kind of like the Mike Green situation with him is like one good rep, but then the next rep he gets stonewalled. So at the and then we're all talking about the Senior Bowl reps, right? Like, is that going to happen with him? Is he just going to be the next Mike Green that just got hyped up off of one rep as well? So, and to go to your point, like a lot of these edges are only getting the love because every other position is really, really weak here outside of wide receivers. You know what I'm saying? Like wide receivers and corners and edges are so strong in this class that it's almost like they're teetering on the brink of we might just see all defensive players and wide receivers for like the first 4 rounds.
Yeah, I think
so there's a question in the chat. This is better served for Thursday's 7 p.m. linebacker show. But Hank, any thoughts? CJ Allen, is he a pass rushing edge or is he a linebacker to you?
CJ Allen is a versatile linebacker that can get after the passer. He has athleticism after the passer, but his primary position will be linebacker. You're not going to see him line up on the edge, 50% of a game. Maybe he'll get a few reps, a few opportunities to get after the passer in blitz situations on stunts maybe, but more than likely, he's just going to be a middle linebacker in the NFL.
He's going to be Derek Brooks in the NFL to me. Like the ultimate Tampa 2 linebacker. He's so good in coverage. I think people are just going to overlook that for whatever strange reason. But, I think in his career as well, like he kind of transitioned from being an outside linebacker that was on the edge a lot to, being a linebacker that was more in coverage, as we saw this year as well. So, when we talk about versatile guys, you can definitely put that tag on them, but his strength is really let's get after the pass and cover some of these tight ends and help out a safety where I can and drop into Tampa 2 somewhere. I think that's where he's going to shine a lot.
Yeah, I think he's extremely smart. I think Georgia's getting to the point where it's almost like Alabama in the early Nick Saban days, where it's like whoever their inside linebacker is, just draft him, because I think he's just going to be a stud in the league. And it's getting to that point with Georgia linebackers as well.
Yeah. The next Georgia linebacker, the next Georgia tight end. Yeah. And we've got a few of those this year. We've got a few of them next year too.
Yeah.
Because just in, the tight end that's going to be in the draft next year from Georgia is better than Oscar Delp.
I had high hopes for Oscar Delp, man. Like, I don't know if you guys have really dug into his film over the last couple of years, but he looks like Brock Bowers when he catches and runs, but he's not Brock Bowers. It's so strange. It's like watching a ghost that's not as good.
You get that 10%
I love
of
Delp,
Brock
man.
Bowers.
Yeah, I love Delp. He's my tight end too. I believe in him.
He's my tight end 3, and I think he's an excellent addition to almost any tight end room in the league. Honestly, I think people are going to look at the 40 times with tight ends, but for me, it's like that 10-yard split. And that's what I try to explain to people. And I think he's going to have one of the better 10-yard splits, because I don't know if you've seen it's the one highlight that really sticks out to me with Oscar Delp is he catches the ball against Kentucky.
Yeah, I know exactly what
he's
you're
in a
talking about.
swarm of there's like 10 Kentucky defenders, and he just breaks out of it. And I'm like, this guy's different, right? And I think he can get to that level. I think, with somebody like a Todd Monken, who loves to utilize tight ends, built like Oscar Delp, I think he could really thrive in NFL.
Fully agree. Oscar Delp's a baller. I think he'll go round 2 on draft day. I think people will be surprised, how high he goes.
He's another one of those guys that I think he's going to be a better pro than he was in college. And I don't think he was a bad college player. It's just you see it a lot of times out of these Georgia offensive players.
I agree with that. He wasn't. It was just analysis by paralysis or paralysis by analysis or whatever the quote is. But it was kind of like you're comparing a guy that was playing with a bona fide. Everybody knows who Brock Bowers is, right? But you kind of got to take it as he is who he is, even though he can look like it at times. But I agree with you, Hank. Like, I think he goes in the second round and he makes the team really, really happy. But people are going to overlook his blocking talent too. They think it's
Mhm.
just a slimmer guy, but like
No, he
I
can
seen
block.
it.
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
see this
can
dude
block.
put people on their butts over and
Yeah.
over and over. So
'Cause
if
he's
you look
he's
at him in
what?
that way, he's going to be all right.
In
Is he
Mhm.
like
rounds 2 and
6'5"?
3, it is perfectly acceptable to draft a good starter.
Yeah.
Right, like Brock Bowers is probably going to be one of the better tight ends of this generation, right? Like
Hot
he was
take. I think
taken
their
in the
first
top
4
10.
rounds.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If your first
Right.
4 rounds are good, I mean, look at the Lions, look at the Browns, like how much value those guys got in their last
Mhm.
couple of drafts. And
Mhm.
it's really between 2 and 4 where most of their guys started to really shine. So
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I think
I
if
mean,
you're able to get a guy a starter on day 3 or multiple starters on day 3, which is not every team can do it, but that's where Super Bowl rosters are built,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
No, that's especially in a class like this where everybody's older. And it feels like everybody's older. A guy like Jeffrey Mba, who's 27, will go on day 3 and he'll be a high level rotational defensive tackle for a team. But he's not going to go before day 3 because he's 27. But he's going to play out one NFL contract. He's going to be fine. And day 3, like you said, it's where Super Bowl rosters are built. And there's a lot of good pieces that are older that'll go on day 3 that'll help out teams pretty easily.
so any other edges? Why don't we kind of go around and each person mention an edge that we haven't mentioned on the podcast yet? Jordan.
For me,
you
it's
go
Vincent Anthony Jr. out of Duke, 6'6", about 270. For me, as a Duke fan, the biggest thing for me that frustrated me this year was he has a tendency to over pursue a lot of times, and he missed out on a lot of sacks. When he's getting back there and he keeps his head down, he's somebody that, like, I think he's a DPR. He's not really great against the run, even though he is bigger. But I think he's more of a DPR, and he's somebody that on a day 3, you would take just to add him to your rotation.
Hank, one more edge.
Yeah, I'll throw out Keyshawn James Newby from New Mexico. This is a guy who's definitely more athlete than he is edge rusher. But then you can't teach athleticism, and this guy's got plenty of it. He's got juice off the edge. He looks skinny on film, and that's because he is. He's a smaller guy. He's an athlete, but if he gets one pass rush move that he can develop pretty nicely, he's going to turn into a good rotational piece. And from everyone that I've talked to that's talked to him and mentioned, he's apparently has amazing character. All of his teammates love him. He should interview well. So this is a guy we could see going early day 3 just because of his character.
Dante.
yeah, Spencer Fanu's brother, Logan Fano, I think is going to be if you're not looking at him as like an traditional edge rusher just to get after the quarterback, you're going to be disappointed. But I think having him on the edge to stop the run and can, force the quarterback to feel uncomfortable from time to time is really where he shines. If you guys go watch the film, I think it was in October when they played BYU their first time, because I think he was hurt for the second time they played. Or I'm sorry, no, they only played them one time. Thinking of somebody else, but if you watch that game against BYU specifically, I think he had like 9 tackles and he was just in the backfield from time to time, like making their quarterback feel uncomfortable. But Logan Fanu is absolutely, I mean, practicing against your brother every day is gotta be awesome too, right? But yeah, you see number 0 just get in the backfield constantly making running backs feel uncomfortable. So, and I think that's another thing that, is important to mention for the audience too, is like, don't look at these edge rushers as just being guys that get after the quarterback. Like, there's a lot of guys that make their bread, being guys that stop the run and being able to seal off the edges as well and help their linebackers out. So, he might not be a day 1, day 2 guy. He may go to day 3. And then you might see him on a team like the New England Patriots, and Mike Vrabel just falls in love with him because he does his job. So,
And that's a great point, Dante, because Shaq Lawson made a really good living for about 8 to 10 years in the NFL, and he just set a hard edge. You couldn't run to the outside of Shaq Lawson. He turned everything back to the inside. That's a valuable role. Now, we're not getting any pass rush out of him, but I will drop one more edge. LT Overton from Alabama hasn't been mentioned. Some people will project him in to be more of a 3 tech. If you have an odd front defense, I think LT Overton is the prototypical 3-4 defensive end. So Just shout out to LT Overton. Jordan, you want to mention another edge that we haven't talked about?
Mason Rager out of Wisconsin, previously at Louisville. I don't know. I don't know what it is about him, but it just screams Steelers. I don't know if I watch him and I'm like, that just looks like the prototypical Steelers outside linebacker. So I think he's going to be somebody, like we said, he's going to be a 5 to 6 year pro where he just provides instant juice, right? I don't know like what really how you can measure that, but I see instant juice from him. I had a really good Shrine Bowl. I think he was a Shrine Bowl defensive MVP. So he had a really good week there. But yeah, like I said, he's one of those guys that Mike Tomlin would love if he was still in Pittsburgh.
Cool. Hank, one more.
Yeah, my last one. I'm glad we went around one more time because I really wanted to talk about Tyree West from Tennessee, a guy with a limited snap count. But when he had snaps, this is a guy in the NFL you only have to give a few snaps to, and he'll make an impact on one or two of those plays. It's what he did. And I remember watching him over the summer, and I was really impressed against Florida. And he bull rushed Jake Slaughter, and Jake Slaughter is going to be one of the higher centers drafted this year. And just a powerful player, 6'1", 280 pretty much. He can stop the run. He can rush the passer a little bit. He's just a good, well-rounded guy, one of my favorite guys to snag mid to late day 3, possibly even early, depending on how he tests. But just a guy that I really like running a good stunt, just setting an edge as well. Good rotational, good depth piece in the NFL.
Dante, last edge.
Yeah, this is a love-hate relationship with this guy, but it's almost like if he gets to a team and somebody finally unlocks his ability to be great consistently, and that's Patrick Payton from LSU. I'm a Florida State guy. I watched him for 3 years just kind of waste his talent away, year after year after year. But, and also with LSU, I don't think he was as surprising as, he entered a transfer portal and they didn't get what they thought they were going to get. I think Jack Pyburn from, in certain situations shined over him. But sometimes you can just see, like, man, being 6'6", 260, it's kind of like Vincent Anthony. I think they're around the same size, and when you see him in person, it's just like, I don't want to line up against you, dude. Like, this is going to be a tough outing for me every single rep. But if he can just be more physical with just engaging offensive linemen, I think his thing is he likes to step away and try to bend around and think that he's going to get to the quarterback every time. And no, it's another. I've been with the theme of opening up the toolkit, man. Like, throw a spin move in there. You're athletic enough. You're tall enough to get around these guys. If somebody, gets with a good defensive line coach, he might be the guy that was just okay in college and then ends up being an otherworldly edge rusher if he just gets his head out of his butt on certain reps. So, yeah, give me Patrick Payton.
Okay, so I'm going to do a big finish here with 3. So when in doubt, look at the day 3 SEC players. So Marvin Jones Jr. from Oklahoma, Brian Thomas Jr. from South Carolina, and then the draft professor favorite from the summer. He's a Big Ten, but TJ Guy from Michigan. Draft professor, we loved him in the summer. Didn't really put it together this year. I doubt TJ Guy is drafted, but he has some things in the toolbox that if he gets somewhere as a UDFA, I think he's going to stick around a little bit. But I would be surprised if TJ Guy got drafted. Okay, why don't we pause? First of all, Dante, like, you brought the peanut gallery. Like, I love, you've connected your feed to the Draft Professor feed. Do you want to let all of the Draft Professor followers know who you are, about all the content you make and everything else?
Sure. Yeah. Been doing this for, I want to say, a pretty long time. Actually just rebranded for Gridiron Apex. We were previously East Coast Gridiron for a lot of people that have been following us previous to that. But yeah, I'm a familiar face out at the Senior Bowl, and I'll be at the Combine this week as well. I attend things like the Elite 11, watching the high school guys. I feel like that's important. That's the pillar of our sport. So, being able to watch these guys from pretty much their infancy in high school up to, watching them get to the NFL is always a treat for me. It's kind of like watching your little brother grow up to, reach his dreams. So, but yeah, a guy like me that's been through the NFL scouting program and now as an independent scout and doing my draft guides. And one of the best series on our channel is a series called Sliders, where you don't have to be a super fan or in depth with the film to understand a player, and I give them a good glance of that in in a 20-minute segment. So but yeah, I pride myself on being the guy that's I might not have the same opinion as everybody. Like the Tyler Shuck was my number one quarterback last year, and everybody thought I was nuts. So, but look at him thrive now. So yeah, I'm a very, very, very independent thinker, and I think the people that I've connected with, glad to connect with all three of you gentlemen today, as well. But as a guy like me that's actually coached and played quarterback as well, so I try to put all of that together and give the best opinion on this as I go. And draft season is my favorite part of the season outside of watching these guys play on Saturdays, Sundays, and Fridays. So, but yeah, Gridiron Apex on all social media, and you can follow me there, DM me anytime. I'll show up and talk some ball with everybody.
Yeah, draft day is like Christmas, but instead of the 12 days of Christmas, we get the 12 weeks of the draft.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Jordan, you want to introduce yourself to everybody and tell them about your podcast and your other content?
Yeah, so my name is Jordan Hunt, Panther Pulse on X and Instagram as well. New to creating content for the draft, been following the draft for about, like I said, 5 years now. So, each year I learn a different thing. I think I've learned more probably in the last 3 months than I did the first 4 years. And I think it's just putting in the time. So, you look at how people evaluate, and you understand that, different perspectives is probably the best thing about the evaluation process. For me, when I first started off, if I liked a prospect and I said, okay, this prospect's ranked here, and somebody was like, well, I have a day 2 grade on him, but I was like, he's my top 5, and I was like, that's dumb. Like what, so. I think, just going through the process and understanding different perspectives and hearing different thoughts and saying, okay, well, maybe I should look at it like this when I'm watching this film, because another thing, when I first started watching film, I was like, oh, that's flashy. And the flashy guys were, okay, let me move him up. But I wasn't going in depth on their film and like, okay, what's he doing? And something that somebody pointed out to me the other day was like, if I'm watching Katie McDonald's film, I need to be watching Sonny Styles. Like, what does Sonny Styles look like on his non-highlight tape? And that was the biggest thing for me going into this year. It was like, okay, if I'm watching a prospect, let me look over and see what Peter Woods is doing when I'm watching TJ Parker. But like I said, Panther Pulse on X and Instagram.
Hank.
Yeah, it'll be Hank Knows Ball on Twitter and Substack. Just Twitter scout mostly, and then figure out the rest on Substack. Try to get an article out once in a while, hopefully more. Always say it'll happen, never happens, but I think I'll get one out this week, hopefully. Probably about the edge class, because most of these guys' rankings are going to be finalized unless they test out of this world at the combine. So getting excited to get everything finalized and get my big board together.
Okay, so I want to take a moment, first of all, to thank everybody in the chat. So if you have a chance to go like the podcast or subscribe to the Draft Professor channel, that would be greatly appreciated. Draft Professor is a group of about 80 podcasters, and we podcast on the draft every day. So Hank is here every Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern. There's a couple people that are usually here. Drew, ironically, I think is at the combine or a Kansas game or something to that effect. But I can go on Twitter. Jordan, Dante, thank you for stopping by. Ultimately, everything at the Draft Professor is multiple people's opinions, right? It's not any one person's opinions. My knowledge is a conglomerate of everybody's opinions because everybody's talking about the different things on this podcast channel. And that's how I learn about who all the players are in the draft. Speaking of which, Draft Professor has 3 different ways for fans to get involved. So first, every Friday, we do a group mock draft. So Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern. So Jordan has picked for the Panthers in that mock before. If anybody in the chat wants to pick for Jacksonville or any other team, you can follow the podcast, or you can put in the picks for your team. And if you want to register for that, go to the Draft Professor Twitter page and find the pinned post. So the pinned post is always the group mock on Fridays. This Friday, it is Bengals and Brews and Newt Weston. So Newt Weston is head of the Cheesehead TV guide for Green Bay Packers, and Dale Altman from Bengals and Brews is probably the largest Cincinnati Bengals draft podcast. So those two will be on the podcast. Everybody else is making the picks, and it takes 2 hours, and it's a lot of fun. April 9th, 10th, and 11th is Epic Mock 26. That is a mock draft with 32 podcasters mock drafting against each other. It will take us 3 days to finish that mock. So if you're looking for more draft content, that is the biggest mock draft of the season. Last year, we had more than 7,500 people watch it. So it's big. So if you have a chance to catch Epic Mock, I think, Jordan, I think you said that's about when your wife is due to give birth, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So we're still looking for a Panthers podcaster. My favorite Panthers podcaster has to reserve time for his wife, and that's the right decision. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And then lastly, Draft Professor, we also have a really cool mock draft simulator. There is no simulator like it. And you can see some of the examples. Like we had a 7 p.m. podcast with the 49ers. There's some different buttons on that. So if you like doing mock drafts, the Draft Professor simulator will be something that you enjoy. You can pretty much guarantee unique mock drafts every time you use it if you know where the right buttons are. But with that being said, again, hit that subscribe, hit that like. For Hank, Dante, Jordan, myself, and the 80 podcasters at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you on a podcast again tomorrow. Have a good day, everybody.